The intertemporal substitution of labor supply has far-reaching implications for the interpretation of important phenomena. If, for example, the intertemporal substitution of labor supply is high, one may interpret the large variations in employment during business cycles as voluntary choices by the workers rather than involuntary layoffs. Intertemporal substitution also plays a crucial role in the propagation of shocks across periods. Previous studies have found little evidence for the intertemporal substitution of labor. The estimated elasticities are often small and statistically insignificant, and sometimes even negative. The low estimates of intertemporal substitution are difficult to interrupt. However, because of serious limitations in the available data, the life cycle model of labor supply predicts intertemporal substitution with regard to transitory wage changes or wage changes the workers anticipate. Yet the typical wage changes are not transitory. Hence, they are associated with significant income effects. In addition, it seems almost impossible to infer reliably from existing data whether the workers anticipated the wage change. Furthermore, serious endogeneity problems arise as both supply and demand conditions determine wages. Thus, the typically available data require many auxiliary assumptions when testing the life cycle model of labor supply. Another issue arises if labor markets are characterized by a significant amount of job rationing. Or other constraints on workers' labor supply. In fact, there is strong evidence suggesting that workers are not free to set their working hours, rendering the identification of the source of small intertemporal substitution effects difficult, even if the problems mentioned above could be solved. A small intertemporal substitution effect could be due to these constraints, or it could be that the behavioral assumptions behind this life cycle model are wrong. Indeed, Colin F. Cameron et al. 1000 or 1997 put forward the view that New York City cab drivers' daily labor supply is driven by non-standard reference dependent preferences that exhibit loss aversion around their target income level. This view has recently been called into question by Henry S. Faber. In this paper, we use an ideal dataset to study workers' responses to transitory wage changes. We conducted a randomized field experiment at a bicycle messenger service in Zurich, Switzerland. The bicycle messengers receive no fixed pay component and are paid solely on commission. We have precise information for all the workers on the number of shifts they work and the revenues they generate per shift. A shift always comprises 5 hours, and workers in our sample worked at most one shift per day. A key feature of the experiment is the implementation of the exogenous and transitory increase of 25% in the commission rate. Therefore, we can be sure that unobserved supply or demand variations did not induce the change in the commission rate, the wage change. Each participant in the experiment knew ex ante the precise duration and size of the wage increase. Since the wage was increased only during 4 weeks, its impact on workers' lifetime wealth is negligible. In the theme under study, the messengers can freely choose how many shift hours they work and how much effort they exert to generate revenues. This means that our setting also provides an ideal environment for studying the behavioral foundations of labor supply. In our context, the absence of intertemporal substitution effects cannot be attributed to institutional constraints on labor supply. The exogenous change in the commission rate raises the returns from both the number of shifts and effort per shift. In contrast to earlier studies, we have the unique opportunity of studying how hours and effort respond to the wage increase and how overall labor supply is affected. Our experimental results show that the wage increase caused a large increase in overall labor supply. Our estimate of intertemporal elasticity of substitution with regard to overall labor supply is between 1.12 and 1.25. This large effect is exclusively driven by the increase in the number of hours worked.